Welcome back. Today, Julie and I are talking about listing presentations disasters, 10 blunders that sink your sale.
Well, not that that could ever happen, right?
No,
But let's just say.
when Julie comes up with a really good title, I'm always enchanted by it because sometimes her titles are a little boring. But yes, this definitely it's a great list. How many points is it altogether? 10 points, yes, of things you need to check yourself against so you don't lose a sale over something silly. And remember, you can learn more about Premier Coaching, which is focused on all aspects of building a very successful and most importantly, profitable real estate business by simply texting the word Premier to 47372. Text the word Premier, Premier, to 47372. And when you do, we'll text you back a link to join Premier Coaching. And that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our Harris certified coaches. Almost 4,000 agents from all over the United States and 24 different countries are part of our organization. We encourage you to join as well. It doesn't cost you anything. Text the word Premier to 47372. Julie?
All right, so listing presentation disasters, 10 blunders that could sink your sale. Now, any one of these could sink your sale. And if you're falling into doing more than one of these, then for sure you could lose the listing. So let's just say you've worked hard to secure that next listing appointment, whether that's from a referral, a hot open house lead, or a social media connection. Now you're prepared and you're ready to shine. You've even used your pre-qualification script, gathered the seller's answers, and previewed the competition. You've rehearsed your objection handlers and you're ready to handle any of their worries. Your well-researched and beautifully prepared comparable market analysis is ready for in-person presentation. Well, after all of this preparation, don't let avoidable mistakes cost you the listing. Follow this simple checklist to excel and walk away with a signed listing agreement, securing the seller's confidence that you are the best choice to sell their home. Now, this is a checklist. If they wanted to get the notes, how can they do it?
Well, go to harrisrealestatedaily.com. harrisrealestatedaily.com is our daily newsletter where all of these points live. It does not cost you anything. When you subscribe to harrisrealestatedaily.com, you'll not only get all of our notes, but that day's podcast as well, harrisrealestatedaily.com. So, Julie, this is funny as I'm reading your notes. Sorry for not previewing this part of today's pod. So I remember very many coaching calls from very experienced, seasoned veteran agents who had long track records of being very successful listing agents, listing basically every single listing they go on, or at least 9 out of 10. They followed our 7-step listing process. They, generated the lead, pre-qualified, sent the pre-listing pack, confirmed the appointment, all the things. They did all the things at the highest level, and they were basically 100% the most effective listing agent in their marketplace. All right, so then all of a sudden, I remember many times when they would show up to coaching calls and they'd say, I didn't get one. And I'd be like, what? You didn't get a listing appointment?
How?
Or they'd say, I didn't get 2, or I didn't list 3 or something. I went on 10 appointments. I only listed 5. And they'll say, I have all these voices that are just starting to drown out my ability to think clearly because this happens so many times. They'll swear, I'm doing exactly what I've always done. And then it's like, as a coach, I have to think to myself, well, what's changed? What's going on? But nope, I knew what to say. I said, so I want you to walk me through every single thing you did. Every single thing you did leading up to the appointment. And I'll ask them, did you send the pre-listing pack? Did you pre-qualify the seller? Did you ask all the questions? Did you get answers to all the questions? Did you send the pre-listing pack with all the added information? And usually I would find that they maybe skipped one step or didn't ask all the questions. So they weren't doing it at the highest level, right? They were starting to get lazy. And then it was like, okay, when you were actually on the listing appointment, how much did you stick to our listing presentation? And usually they'll say like, I did it exactly the way you've always taught me to do it. And then you start getting, as a coach, into asking questions about what they actually said and what actually happened. And then sure enough, you're going to find more things that they started to edit, they started to shortcut. Because here's the bottom line. Michael Phelps, it's I love this story because it's so powerful, right? So Michael Phelps, as you guys remember, he's not in the Olympics this year, but he won, I think it was 4 Olympics or 3 Olympics in a row.
Yep.
And he was obviously a phenomenal swimmer. So he had the same coach that would coach him to do the same damn thing every single day. And it was a 60 minutes interview. Some of you might remember this, where it was interviewing, going through the day of Michael Phelps. He got up every morning at 4 a.m. He ate more food than I think you and I eat in like a month. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he was going to burn all those calories. Then he'd show up at the pool at 4:30. He was always, and the coach would already be there. Not a lot, no niceties exchanged, no, how's it going? And, blah, blah, blah. The coach would just stand on the other side of the pool. Michael would jump in. And remember, we're watching this in 60 minutes. You guys can probably find this on YouTube. And he would, complain about how cold it was, the whole thing. And he'd just do that day in and day out. It was dark outside. It was dark inside. I mean, it was like one of Dante's levels of hell, basically.
It was like for 7 hours a day, too.
Minus the fact that he got to eat all that junk food in the morning, like 17 cup, all this stuff. Anyway, so he did this year in and year out. And what happened? He became the world's best long-distance swimmer, okay? Now, over time, he decided to, you guys will remember this, he fired his coach. And what happened after he fired his coach? He got caught smoking marijuana, and he did all these other things, and he started to lose. He started to lose consistently. And then what did he do? He hired that coach back, and the coach basically was able to pick back up and, where they left off and get the guy back to where his best of breed gold medal winning swimming abilities. Now, you would think, well, the coach had to go back. Like, what was the coach doing? The coach was doing the same damn thing every single time, telling him the same thing every single time, never doing anything different, watching every single stroke, watching every single little micro movement that Michael was making in his water. And Michael figured, I'm going to fire this guy because he's just telling me the same thing over and over again. And I mean, I'm able to know what he's going to say before he's going to say it. I don't need him. I'm going to fire my coach. I'm going to start showing up at the pool at 8 o'clock. I don't have to be there at 4. I'm going to stay up. I'm going to stay out late. I'm going to start partying. I'm going to start enjoying life. Then he started to lose. So why am I telling you all this? Because at the end of the day, and this is the story I would tell my coaching clients when they would basically no longer follow the exact proven path to being consistently successful. A coach's job is to teach you how to do it in the first place, but then look for any little fluctuation. Now, sometimes Michael might figure out a way to make himself a microsecond faster because some little something he does when he's in the water. Well, the coach who had the stopwatch would look for what that change was and maybe say, well, let's see if it's consistent. And then if it was consistent, made it consistently faster, then guess what? Then they would, change the way that they're doing that particular thing. Again, that's what a great coach does. And practice it. I want you to think about that. How consistently do you actually follow a listing process? How consistent are your listing presentations? How even, do you deal with everybody following the exact same process, the exact same way, like Michael's coach did with Michael, like every professional does with every client, right? So when you're thinking about, well, I used to be a real home run hitter and I'd list 9 out of 10 of my listings, and now I guess I just have to accept 5 out of 10. The reason that you're losing is not because your competition's gotten any better, because they probably haven't. It's because you fired your coach mentally or emotionally, or actually maybe you did, and you have lost your ability to be introspective enough, and you started losing the very same little micro steps that gave you advantage in the first place, right? So I'm going to tell you some of the things, and Julie's going to give you these 10 points, that we would look for somebody that was performing at a highest level, and then we're going to look to see if they started making any of those little, missteps, and that may be why they started to lose. Because in a highly competitive swimming pool when you're swimming for a gold, or a listing presentation when you're trying to list a sweet house, and you're actually competing for that listing, or guess what? New reality check. When you're competing for a really kick-ass buyer and you're competing against 2 or 3 other agents, because that is what's going to be happening. You're going to be giving presentations. You're going to have to show them your value, or they're not going to sign their exclusive contract with you. We're going to teach you how to do that in the new Ethical Real Estate Professional Designation Program that we have coming out later this month. If you want to learn more about that, text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. The whole industry is going to be competitive. You're going to have to be more professional, right? So if you are somebody who used to be at the top of their game and you're no longer at the top of your game, or you're just getting your game on and learning your game, I want you to listen to these 10 points that Julie's about to give you in a great bit of detail, and be introspective and be open to be critical and to maybe make some serious course corrections ASAP before the market does permanently pass you by.
Very well said, and I like your example of Michael Phelps. I think there's a lot of sports. Didn't Tiger Woods do the same thing? Fire his coach and start losing, and then have to get back to coaching.
He did. That was another
there's
example.
a lot of examples of this.
Well, you and I've done it. Let's be honest, with kettlebells.
Yeah,
with working out.
You can get hurt that way.
Yeah. I mean, we have, but everything. It's because when you have somebody that's external that's watching you, that's frankly competent, knows what the hell they're doing.
An interested third party.
Exactly. That is essentially in alignment with what your ultimate goal is, which is, you winning, or in the case of you being a listing agent, or a prospective listing agent, you winning the listing, and all the incentive structures are pulling in the same direction, you're going to win more consistently at a higher level. But if you find yourself losing, or better yet, never make any of these 10 mistakes. Number one, you must show up on time. On time is late. Early is on time. 10 or 15 minutes. Don't sit in your car. They're watching you. You look weird. Get out of your car, knock on the door. You're early. They're going to appreciate that. That shows respect.
Budget extra time every time just to be safe. Let's say you get there early. So drive the neighborhood, observe other listings, see if there's a for sale by owner, and then you'll have even more knowledge when you arrive. Okay, so number one, show up on time. Number two, parking prowess. Don't play driveway dominoes with the homeowner's car. Park on the street, allowing them to come and go without a vehicular obstacle course.
Can we tell them a story?
Yes.
Okay, this is when Julie and I were first learning how important number two was. We went on a listing appointment. The lady of the house let us in. We were sitting at the kitchen table. This is before we really had our act together, but we still sold over 100 houses our first year in real estate. Yes, we did. And we were sitting with the lady. The husband comes home, and he's kind of pissed off. I mean, I don't know him. Julie doesn't know him.
Grumpy.
This was a competitive listing presentation. No center of influence and past client. He was grumpy. And then we sat there, arms crossed, didn't make any contact, didn't try to communicate with us. Fortunately for us, the lady of the house really liked us, wanted to list the house with us. She listed the house with us. And then we found out at the end of the listing appointment why he was pissed off. Because he was parked in the street, it was raining, and we blocked him from pulling into his garage. Yeah. Lesson learned.
Yeah, I mean, that's an obvious mistake that you can fix. So don't get into this whole parking lot issue, right? And it could be their teenage kid is coming home. It could be their nanny has to leave and she's parked in. So just stay out of the driveway. All right, number three, strive for handshake harmony. Aim for a handshake that's just right, like Goldilocks porridge, right? It should be not too strong. Don't be a bone crusher. I hate it when people shake your hand and try and kill you. Not too weak, like a limp fish, right? You've got to have a strong, quick, professional handshake. Practice if you have to. There's
a lot of psychology, or I would say pseudoscience or pseudopsychology that goes into handshaking. Like you just put your hand out and you shake it. I mean, that's the move. But some people will coach you or train you really to then put your other hand over the hand that they're shaking you with, or put your hand on their shoulder or their upper arm.
Or turn their hand over as a power play.
Personally, I think that's just a bunch of Mickey Mouse. And anybody who's watched a single YouTube video or watched anything on Instagram about all this stuff, you're instantly going to come off as fake. So just shake their hand and get back down to business.
Seriously, yes. I have to show you a quick thing that happened at Zoe's school, right towards the end of school last year. I was meeting one of her older friends that she was in some class with. And, Zoe's 10, this girl's probably 14 or something. And I was so impressed. She introduced herself. Okay. She's like, Zoe was like, hey, let's go say, I see Margot, right? Let's go say hi to Margot. And I said, oh, hi, Margot. You must know Zoe's from wherever. Margot introduces herself as Margot plus her last name, sticks her hand out to shake my hand and says, it's so nice to meet you. Now, that kid somewhere along the line had taken an etiquette class. Her parents taught her how to introduce herself. I was like, wow, that's really cool.
Did Zoe see that?
Yes, fortunately.
Did that make an impression on her?
I don't know. We'll see. I hope so. But I thought it was awesome. It's something that you can practice. All right. Number 4, house rules, no shoes. If you spot a shoe tray by the door, it's a sign to slip off your kicks.
Well, I'll go to the next level. Think about this. Again, Julie and I learned this the hard way. If they're in a house where they never wear shoes, which is most houses nowadays, and you're wearing your shoes and you're wearing shoes with the heels, whatever, the noise of you walking around the house and making that clumping noise is going to grind on that seller like you cannot believe. Yes, it's a house they're about to sell, but you did not have the respect to take your stinking shoes off as you walk through their clean house, and you already know they're probably germaphobes, and you have instantly set emotion, them not wanting to do business with you. Subconsciously, they don't like you because you weren't smart enough to take your shoes off. And I'll tell you something else that I remember very clearly, Julie and I learning this when we started listing more expensive homes. This is funny, but it's true. I'm sorry, but it's true. You will see, when you take your shoes off, people will see, what kind of shoes they are.
That's true.
And I remember very specifically, we had a listing appointment. It was like when we started listing over $1 million properties. ladies would see what kind of shoes you were wearing,
All the time.
which was funny.
So, if you're going to buy new shoes, it is a good idea to buy something that's decent and brand name, because there are people that notice. And it doesn't really matter what you think about that. If you think that's flaky or not, it doesn't matter. You're in their home, you're a guest. They want to, they want you to be probably more like them. And here's the thing. You made a point about, the heels on the travertine or whatever. I have found that it's bad also to have, like, even if you're not wearing actual flip-flops, like the sound of your sandals clicking on your heels is
Well, if you're wearing
distracting.
sandals on a listing appointment,
That's dumb too. I don't care if you live in a beach town, just don't
Exactly.
do that. And in addition to that, just don't be the one who leaves a trail of mud or sand if you live near the beach on their pristine floors, okay? Don't let that be you.
Advanced coaching in our listing presentation, a part of our what we teach you in Premier Coaching, text the word Premier to 47372. One of the USPs, unique selling propositions you offer to the seller, it's a bit of a gimmick, but it's a great idea, is you are going to put a basket of shoe covers in the front of their house. And the basket of shoe covers is going to have, guess what in it? Shoe covers. And there's a sign on it that says, please remove your, what does it say?
Please remove your shoes or cover them to take care of the floors, which might someday be yours.
That's right. So during listing, imagine you're talking with the seller and you're showing the seller maybe the actual basket, but probably a picture of it. So Mr. Seller, we're going to put this by the front door of your house so that, they're not tracking your house up. You don't have to vacuum it every time you have a showing. And oh, by the way, this also is leaving the impression upon the buyer that even though you're moving from the house, you do still very much care about the condition of the house, which subconsciously is going to convince, or at least going to lean the buyer towards the appreciation of the fact that you're, attentive to those types of things. You guys get it? It's all these tiny little micro steps that make the difference sometimes, when otherwise everyone's really good. Everyone has a great presentation. Everyone has a great personality. You and the other agents you're competing against, these tiny little coaching tips are how you win.
That's right. It makes a great first impression, that shoe cover basket. And by the way, you can get medical shoe covers on Amazon. I checked.
They're super cheap.
And you can just get baskets at your dollar store or at a garage sale. So,
Yep.
Okay. Now, number 5, enthusiasm is infectious. Bring your A game with energy and enthusiasm. When touring the home, be positive and complimentary. Maybe you don't love their wallpaper, but they do. Don't lose the listing by being boring or overly critical. Leave that for the stager to tackle. Leave that for some of the feedback. Don't overdo that, because even if they loved everything else you did, if you make them feel like crap about their decorating, you're not going to get hired.
Do not talk about the condition of the house. Do not talk about the decorating. Do not talk about anything that you find disagreeable, that the market even might find disagreeable. Do not do anything to talk yourself out of the listing. Your goal when going on the listing appointment is to, you followed our process. They've seen the pre-listing pack. They've already basically 90% decided they're going to list with you, is to not talk yourself out of the listing by saying dumb things. One of the dumb things you can say is if you walk in there and you start being a home inspector, acting like you're a home inspector. And even if you are a home inspector, your job is to help them position the house correctly in the market to reflect the buyer's expectations, price, condition, location. After they've signed the listing paperwork, if they want it, you can either yourself give them suggestions on decorating or redecorating the home, or you can then send in a stager, somebody that's going to give them the advice that maybe you don't want to have to be the bad guy for telling them that, guess what, chartreuse appliances maybe not the thing, right? Or maybe having a bunch of mounts on the wall, maybe not. I mean, you guys get it. So think through this process. We teach you guys how to do all this in Premier Coaching. Julie's next point number 6, is really powerful. I'm going to add a little bit to it. Go ahead.
Point number 6, and we can discuss this one. Seating strategy, the great debate. Dining room or kitchen table? Should you sit at the head of the table or let somebody else? Generally, we coach you to let them call the shots, take the seat that feels like home, sweet home to them. Avoid the awkwardness of fighting over the head of the table and just ask where they usually sit. Now, driver personalities, be especially aware of that point, because you're going to naturally be drawn to the head of the table.
All right, Julie, you have a mom moment. You just got texted about Zoe, so you got to check your text.
Yep, thanks.
Okay, all right, so I'm going to talk a little bit about this. Again, as part of our listing presentation, I'm guys going to go through these points relatively quick. You show up early. You don't park in the driveway. You walk up to the front door. You ring the doorbell. They open the door. And then you say, Mr. Seller, before I take another step in your house, I want you to know, I know this for some of you, you don't want to use these words. You can change it ever so slightly, but don't get away from Julie's previous point, which is energy and enthusiasm. I want you to know that I'm 100% committed to getting this home sold. Now show me to the kitchen table. Okay? And again, you walk in, you're going to take your shoes off. you're going to then walk to the kitchen table. The seller, if hopefully it's a round table that frankly makes it easy. Sit wherever the hell the seller tells you to sit. Avoid the dining room. Don't go to the family room. Go to the kitchen table, assuming there's a kitchen table. Why? Because the dining room is going to be too big and awkward, and they never use it except during the holidays. So it's just kind of a strange environment.
Too formal.
The family room, that's where they go and chill and have beer or whatever they do. You don't want to be there. You want to be at the kitchen table when you absolutely positively can. Now, when positioning people around the table, you sit where they ask you to sit, and they're naturally going to sit where they normally sit. So they're probably going to sit you in the kid's seat, right? And assuming, it's a couple, they're going to sit where they always sit. And then if you have to, if it's a square or rectangle table, do your best not to sit opposed to them. So if it's a square table and for some reason or let's say a rectangle table, don't put them on the opposite side. So if they're, for some reason, if they choose to sit side by side at a rectangle table, then you want to try to position yourself at the head of the table and just say it so it's basically you can communicate to them both easier. Why? Because subconsciously, psychologically, if you're sitting in opposition to them on the opposite side of the table, again, these tiny little micro steps will actually create a little bit of a thing that you're going to have to move past. They're going to feel more adversarial to you. That's just human psychology. I'm going to add something else. Whatever they offer you, minus alcohol.
This
right?
is point number 7.
Oh, it is? Okay, good. Yes, point number 7.
Hospitality acceptance. I think this is where you're going.
Yes, it was.
Okay, when your prospective seller hands you water and cookies, say thank you and enjoy the treats. It's a small gesture that can make a big difference in building rapport. And maybe they just baked those cookies just for you. I know it feels like you're being more polite to say no thank you, but it's actually better to say yes thank you. Gosh, these look really great. So hospitality acceptance is important.
For a lot.
And now I agree with you, except if they're alcohol or whatever.
Well, so a lot of people, and I've run afoul of this in my life, I'll admit it. Mm-hmm. Like, I'll tell you guys a story. So we were over at Thanksgiving at Julie's house. And at the time, I was, for whatever reason, I wasn't interested in having ham or something. I don't remember what it was. So her mom offered me ham. And I just had a bunch of turkey, and I wasn't wanting ham. This is stupid, but I'll make a point, because this is where I became really aware of how for some people, the refusal of the food that they're offering you, they take it personally. So when I said no thank you, I was very polite. She took personal offense to that. And she held that against me for quite a while, right? And I didn't really realize the offense that I had been making. But indeed, it was there. So anytime I learned that when Julie, I was in my 20s, but still, I should have learned it by then, right? So if anybody offers you anything in a listing presentation, do not go, don't say no. Don't say no, thank you. Don't ask if it's gluten-free. Don't give them your list of the foods that you find objectionable and blah, blah, blah. Say thank you. It doesn't mean you have to actually eat it. Maybe at the end of the appointment, it's still sitting there.
Just nibble.
You could say, wow, I didn't even touch that. Do you mind if I take it with me? You guys get it?
Yeah.
We went on a listing appointment. I'll never forget this. And they told us, Julie's laughing, but it's true. They told us they were giving us marijuana brownies, and they're putting them down. Now, I'm not saying the marijuana brownies wouldn't have made that listing appointment more enjoyable.
Yeah, I remember that one.
It would have. You remember this one?
Should have brought them with us.
House smelled like smoke.
Exactly.
But we told them, we said, yes, thank you.
Yeah,
and then we took them with us. And then we threw them out. Okay. But that happened.
So adjust accordingly. But the point is that breaking bread together, whether that's a cookie or whether that's, they baked a loaf of bread for you, is kind of an innate human connection. And if you even subconsciously reject that, for some people, they're not going to say, oh, maybe I'm not going to list with you because you didn't take my cookie.
It'll subconsciously.
They're going to say, I didn't feel it. I just didn't feel a connection.
Right. That's what I'm going to say. So if all other things are equal, you and this other agent have the same everything, listing price, listing commission, all the other things, right? In the mind of the sellers, everything's equal, but they ate that cookie and you said no because you did whatever on a diet, they're going to get that listing. I know it sounds stupid.
It's a dumb way to lose a listing.
That's the way life works.
It is true. Okay, now we're on the home stretch. Point number 8, gratitude is the attitude. Whether you clinch the listing on the spot or not, send a thank you card. It's like sprinkling gratitude confetti on your client's day, and you may be the only one who's that thoughtful. All of my coaching clients do this, by the way. You're competing from the moment you set the appointment to the time they sign the agreement. So at the very least, send a thank you card.
And I'll give you this suggestion as well. is if you should always, and we teach you to do this in Premier Coaching, we certainly teach you to do this in our personalized one-on-one coaching programs, you should always be closing on the listing paperwork while you're at the listing appointment. Be back so if they say, call me back, I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to do the other thing, and they're putting you off, we're going to teach you how, well, frankly, if you are in a situation where you've been there and you presented to them and they're still not wanting to sign the paperwork, I'll give you guys a little script. Mr. Seller, listen, I found that 9 times out of 10, after I've talked with somebody, you've asked all the questions, you know that they're saying, I have no more objections, I just want to think about it. Okay, Mr. Seller, thinking about it's important. This is a big decision. But I found 9 times out of 10, when someone's not moving forward with me at this point, after we sat down and talked, that it's most likely because we're not in alignment about something like price or something else. So, Mr. Seller, if there was maybe 1 or 2 things that are still standing in the way of us moving forward, the things you want to think about, what would those things be? Because frankly, I won't be able to sleep tonight if I don't feel like I did a really great job answering all your questions.
That's right. Then answer their questions.
Right. And then they're going to tell you, and here's what you're going to discover. If you followed our listing presentation, if you followed the 7-step process, if you pre-qualified, sent the pre-listing pack, done all the things, at the end of the appointment, if they're not moving forward with you and they're not signing the listing contract, it's almost, and you're the last person that they're interviewing, which is what we suggest you do. It's almost always because of the price. And you did not pre-qualify completely. Remember I was telling you the Michael Phelps thing? One of the questions in the seller pre-qualification script that we give you as part of Premier Coaching is it's one of the, it's a script where you're pre-qualifying the seller, but one of the questions is asking them what they think the home is worth. Oh, you're saying, we never asked that in my marketplace. I know that's not the script. The script is, so Mr. Seller, listen, I'm going to be spending, maybe 3 or 4 hours working on a CMA. It's basically an agent's version of an appraisal. Not the same, but it's in essence what I'm doing. So help me choose what the comparables, or what we call in the industry comps, are that I should be using for your house. So what properties have you seen? I know what's sold. I know what's for sale, but I'm interested from your perspective. What properties have you seen sell in your marketplace that you feel are maybe comparable to yours? Maybe you know the house from having gone to a Christmas party there. Maybe they had a garage sale, whatever. So what properties have you seen sell in your marketplace in the last, say, 60 to 90 days or even longer that you think are similar to your property? Now, I'm going to give you guys advanced coaching. Every single seller on planet Earth, minus the absentee owners, but even them, have an opinion what their house is worth. And if they say they don't have an opinion what their house is worth, they have an opinion, but they know their opinion is more than what it's probably worth, right? So you need to root out of them that, yes, I know my house is worth, based on all the previous comps, $1 million, but because I did this, that, and the other thing, put in a new pool or whatever, I think it's $1.3 million. You need to pull out of them through that question that I just gave you. They'll say, for example, they'll say, well, this house sold, I know this property sold for this property sold for this. And the next question you're going to ask is, well, compared to those properties, how do you think your house compares? And they're going to say, well, this one had a bigger backyard, but this one is on a busy road. But neither one of these had a pool. And I just put in this pool. And let's say it's a marketplace where the market wants a pool, Texas, for example. And you're going to say, okay, well, so I understand your pool is going to definitely make your property worth more value in our marketplace. So now you know what the seller is thinking. You guys get it? Now you know what the seller is thinking. And so when you're in the listing appointment, you will not lose over the price, or you will not have to walk away from the listing appointment without the contract signed because you were not in alignment with the seller about what the price was, because you followed our listing process and you completely incorrectly pre-qualified them.
Well, that is part of the pre-qualification script. And it's interesting because when we coach that, because there's so much more than what we can do on a podcast,
I know.
Right? A lot of times, this is when we've done some podcasts. If you guys want to look up in the podcast series about the 7-step listing process, when you're not on the same page regarding price, and let's say, my comps say all day long it's $1 million, but you're at $1,250,000, the inexperienced agent will then unqualify the listing and decide not to go on it because the seller overpriced it. We coach you that the script is, that's interesting. How did you arrive at that price?
Right.
And then you're going to find out they just put a $300,000 pool in there with all of the things and all the landscaping, and maybe it actually is worth that, especially if you're in a market that loves that kind of thing. Instead of being, almost looking for a reason not to go on the appointment, you have to watch your scripting and your conversation. That's interesting. How did you arrive at that price? So I'll tell you the other reason you use that, since we got on this and we've got 2 more points, is because in a world where there's so many pocket listings, they may actually say, well, my comp that I have in my mind is 2 streets away, and you didn't even find it in the MLS because it's sold off market, and maybe it's a really killer comp.
But Julie, that's another good point. Don't be doing CMAs based on MLS statistics and data anymore. You're going to have to pull in actual sales data from your property records that happen, at the courthouse, but you can get access to that. Your broker might have that, or you might need to get it yourself, but you're going to have to expand. And also, this is where it gets more complicated. You're going to have to start factoring in if there's new construction that's competing in your market, how that actually might positively or negatively affect the price, because the seller is going to know. The seller is going to know. Like I said, every single seller has an opinion what their property is worth. You do, dear listener, don't you?
Yes, that's right.
And I bet, here it is, you think your house is worth more than it's probably worth, just like every seller you're ever going to meet with. When was the last time you met with a seller who thought their house was worth less than market price? That happens
Said
never.
no seller ever.
Exactly.
I know. There's so many details we could go into. All right, we have 2 more points about blunders that you do not want to have on a listing appointment. Number 9, no politics, please. Keep the conversation neutral like Switzerland. Avoid political minefields and keep the focus on real estate, not on political debate. It is inappropriate to go down that road. Has nothing whatsoever to do with your ability to sell the house or what they're after in terms of your services for them.
Sometimes people will try to bait you, okay? They're
true.
going to say things to try to bait you into conversation that frankly is not appropriate for a professional to be having a listing appointment. And you just got to be Switzerland, like Julie said. Or the great advice Julie and I got in our more formidable years was be a Republicrat. Be a Republicat. I can see it from both sides. And, or the best yet, just avoid it.
Just avoid it. Okay.
I'm so busy getting my listing sold, Mr. Seller, that I actually don't even pay attention to the news. I know that sounds crazy, but the reality of it is I'm sure you would prefer me, not toiling away my hours of life, watching MSNBC or Fox News. You'd much prefer that I find a buyer for your house.
Very well said. All right, last but not least, number 10, but this one's really important. Dress for success. Dress to impress, but err on the side of a tad bit nicer than your prospects. Striking the perfect balance between professional and approachable attire is key. So develop 3 or 4 ideal outfits that are your go-to presentation ensembles. I like to tell a quick story from a coaching client about this, who's a very, very experienced agent in Phoenix. She would take nearly every appointment, but came to a coaching call once and said, I cannot believe that I blew that last listing appointment. I said, you're kidding me. You never blow listing appointments. What in the world happened? She said one thing. It was the first super hot day of the year in Phoenix, which is like 110 degrees, right?
In the shade.
In the shade. And she said, I overdressed. And there wasn't anything I could do. The outfit I was wearing, there wasn't a jacket to take off. I was wearing too thick. I was sweating the whole time. It gave me a little bit of a mini panic attack. I wanted to get the heck out of there. I couldn't concentrate. I couldn't handle objections. And I forgot to close because I was wearing the wrong outfit.
Well, I think personally, and you and I we're the same. And I have to say, I'm so glad to see the younger generation is swinging back towards essentially getting their act together as how they dress.
Yeah.
But I want you to imagine you're in a listing presentation. In this mind of the seller, I keep saying this, but it's true. In a competitive listing situation, if you're in a really tough market where your other competitors that you're competing with on these listings, and all of you are going to be in this situation as you become more powerful listing agents, everything is, you got the same days in the market, your list sell price ratio is great, your marketing plan is great, your team is great, your blah, 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 blah. Everything is basically the same. There's no discernible difference. You work luxury, you work relo, you have great stuff on social media, all the rest of it. But you dressed a little bit nicer. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to lay into this too. It's not just your dress. It's how you look overall. It's how you smell. Did you actually look, and Julie made a really good point here. You should always, not just when you're going on listing appointments, but in life in general.
When you're out in the wild.
Right. You should always, because you are, like if you guys want to know what your brand is, it's how people perceive you first and foremost. Look, sound like when you talk, how you present yourself, how you smell, how you behave. That's
your haircut, your glasses,
right.
Your nails, your shoes, all of the things.
And this can be applied to your car too, by the way. So always dress a little bit nicer than what your how you normally dress, or how, rather I should say, not how you normally dress, but how the marketplace dresses. It's just a little bit nicer. And I want you to tell the story. So Julie, as you guys may remember, was a professional flautist, and she used to play piccolo in several orchestras. And when we were in Columbus, She used to be, what was it, Columbus Symphony Orchestra, right?
Westerville Symphony Orchestra.
Westerville Symphony.
Yeah.
So she would show up.
Well, rehearsals were always, we were like good semi-professional, I would say, right? So rehearsals are after, most of us had jobs during the day, and we would have a rehearsal in the evening, right? So a lot of people would show up in their sweatpants. They're after work. They're unplugging a little bit to these rehearsals. I would always, always, always make sure that I was dressed more professionally. I'm not talking about like a formal suit necessarily, but I'm wearing nice pants, nice shoes. My hair's done. I've got a nice watch on. I have my act together. I've got a good music bag, all of the stuff. I even always had a nice pencil. To this day, I have nice mechanical pencils, right? So just a notch above. I'm not trying to show off. I'm just trying to look professional. Now,
and you did not have real estate breath.
I didn't have realtor breath.
You never talked. Right. You never talked about. I know you didn't. Yep. You told me this. Right.
When do you plan on moving?
Right.
I didn't do that.
No, she was not in there prospecting.
No.
She was there because people that are in those orchestras, just like most, like church, frankly, like a lot of clubs.
Yeah.
If someone shows up and they're very pitchy to whatever they're selling, they'll essentially it's against the vibe, and they're not going to want anything to do with you.
No, we were there to practice.
Right. So she would show up looking really nice, and eventually.
Well, so what happened, unintended consequence, but then I ended to make it an intended consequence, was people would say, gosh, you always look so nice. What do you do? Which walks you right into the Ford script, family, occupation, recreation, dreams. I'm in real estate. What do you do? And then the conversation goes from there. And then naturally they're going to ask, how's the market? Sometimes I would say I just came from a closing. That opens up the conversation. And we did do quite a few real estate deals from my orchestra friends.
It was in our 4 years, in our fourth year, you and I used to follow our own coaching, and we had a dry erase board where we dried all the, we had lists, all the actually it was closed transactions.
Yep.
Buyers were blue, sellers were red. Mm-hmm. We obviously had spreadsheets and CRMs, but the dry erase board was the ultimate accountability. Our goal every year was to sell 200 homes, so we'd number 1 through 200, and every time we'd have a closing, we'd write the address of the buyer, the address of the,
closing
in blue up on the board. You guys get the gist of it, right? And then I remember halfway through the year, about this time, this is, forever ago, I went and I started, because we'd also source on this board what the actual source of the business was. And I remember it was halfway through the year, we'd sold like 60 or 70 houses, and going through in like 30 or 40 of those transactions, not just listings, but buyers as well, were for Julie's music sphere, because she would sell a house for one of these very introverted musician types, and they turned out had a family and friends.
Sure.
And it was after like Julie's doing this, just dressing nicer, not having real estate breath, they started essentially seeing her as their go-to real estate agent. It was phenomenal.
And it wasn't just for them, it was for their center of influence. So you have to remember that people you come in contact with, your friends, your family, your past clients, people in your clubs, all of the stuff that we coach you to do in, Premier Coaching about expanding your center of influence, each person you come in contact with has their own center of influence. And that's how most real estate deals are done.
Well, the statistic from NAR is after 5 years, most agents, I think they get 60 or 70% of all their deals from centers of influence and past clients.
Assuming they talk to them, yeah.
Well, how about this? Assuming they've been in they last and they get into the business
True.
for 5 years.
Yeah, that's right. But so really, if you look at the 10 things that we talked about today, and we'd like to give you lots of stories because that reminds you that, we actually did sell real estate and did these things. And a lot of these things we learned not to park in the driveway the hard way because we screwed up by parking in the driveway, right? So we share our stories so that you'll remember when you're going to your next listing, oh gosh, I remember I'm not supposed to park in the driveway. I'm supposed to make sure that I have my act together and I look the part. I look like somebody that they're going to hire, right? So each one of these things can make it or break it. And once you start putting a combination of these things together, instead of saying, oh, these are all these mistakes that I've got to be worried about. No, look at this as a competitive advantage.
It's
look
your
at
checklist.
This as your checklist.
Yeah, that's it. So if you follow our 7-step listing process and you find yourself no longer taking 9 out of 10 listings, you should be taking 10 out of 10, but let's just say you've never gotten there in the first place. Are you really following our listing presentation? Are you really sending the pre-listing pack, or did you do your version?
Are you actually pre-qualifying and asking all the questions? Because we know the question you like to skip is the one about price.
That's right. And we've given you 3 scripts on today's podcast, how to get the price out of the seller. They're going to tell you, and if they don't, I just told you most likely why. By the way, you're going to also root out the FSBOs that are just using you to price. You're going to develop these intuitive, abilities that's going to cause you to be very much more effective, not waste time, focus on the people who are actually ready to transact. Do you feel motivated, excited? There's another point. Energy, enthusiasm. Okay, this is like point 3, but this is really important. Energy, enthusiasm is the first thing to go when somebody gets really successful.
That's true.
They start getting complacent. They start becoming lazy. Now, if you're a new agent, and we've completely fire hosed you with information, which is our way, and you're
feeling overwhelmed.
Right. I'm going to tell you the one thing I want you to take away from this. Aside from joining Premier, Premier Coaching, text the word Premier to 47372. I want you to remember this. Most of your competitors, dear new agent, are going to be grizzled veteran agents or friends and family of the seller. They're probably not going to show up with energy and enthusiasm. If you show up with energy and enthusiasm and you do a hodgepodge version of everything we've just taught you how to do, you're still going to win because people are attracted to people that have energy and enthusiasm. And I'm going to tell you how I learned that. Okay. Julie and I were going typically on 1 to 3 listing appointments a day. And I was not taking 9 out of 10 listings. I started to lose my own ratio. And we would always call the seller afterwards if we didn't take a listing and find out why. And I found out, I only had to learn this lesson once. The seller said, well, I don't know why. I mean, Julie and I were so much better than the agent that they listed with. It was like a new agent that they ended up listing with. We had track record success. We had sold 1 billion houses in their neighborhood, all the things, right? They said, well, she asked for the listing and she just seemed more excited about it. Oh no, that isn't what they said. They said, seemed like she believed in the house. What the hell's that
I
mean?
remember that.
Yeah, I'll never forget that.
Because it stung.
Well, it did sting.
Yeah,
because that was
I
just me
remember
being
that.
lazy and not showing enough energy and enthusiasm for the house.
That's right. And, in certain houses, you can be more or less enthusiastic about naturally. So that's why one of our points is, you walk in and every single wall has wallpaper on it and you don't like any of it. It's not your house. You're not going to buy it. Be careful that you don't lose your energy and enthusiasm.
Never say anything negative. Ever, ever, ever.
About anything.
Not online, not in person. Don't say anything
They have
negative.
17 cats and you hate cats. Don't even talk about it. They're not your cats.
What if you're really allergic to them, though?
Well, you'll sneeze your way out of that one, but yes.
All right, guys. So your homework from today's podcast, I'm going to give you 2 things. If you've not yet done it, get on the list to be part of the new ethical real estate professional designation. That program launches in a matter of weeks. We're only going to allow 100 agents to enroll in that program. We've talked about it all week. I won't do it anymore. Just text the word buyer to 47372. The rest of you who want to focus on becoming listing agents, which should be all of you, by the way, we've made it very easy. You can join Premier Coaching for free. Text the word Premier to 47372, or you can just go to premiercoaching.com. Julie, what are we talking about next week?
Next week, we are talking about, there's a 4-part series. I can't remember off the top of my head. Why did you do that to me?
I know, because it's fun for me to catch you off guard.
Oh, I know. 100 day, how to make 100,000 in the next 100 days.
Oh, there you go. Smarty pants. You guys have a fantastic day. We'll talk to you on the show tomorrow.